Don't just live for tomorrow, or just live in yesterday. Just be glad for all you have that's in today.
Hey everyone, Connie here, and welcome to my blind reaction to The Owl House, episode 8. So last time we left off, we continued The Owl House for the first time after quite a while. And it was a great episode for Amity, giving a lot of great development and depth to her character, making her feel like more than just your standard antagonist. And it even introduced some new characters with Amity's siblings. So we had a lot of great stuff last time. Plus, of course, the creativity and everything behind just the books coming to life and that entire thing. There was some fun with the last episode too, but it was definitely more focused on the characters and their connections to each other, their relationships to each other, just how they interacted and everything. There's definitely some progression being made in that regard. And yeah, I really hope that more comes from it. Sooner rather than later, of course. So we're going to get into this. And I'm excited to do so. But before we do, I don't know what to expect, what to quite expect going forward. I have hopes, and excuse me, as I said last time, I do know a couple of things just because it's impossible to avoid at times. But just overall going forward, I don't know quite what to expect. Because when you boil it down to it, the series is still very episodic. Like there's some narrative threads and stuff that kind of connect on through the series. But overall, it's just these little things that are at the moment just being used for build up. Stuff like Edna's owl form, or Ida, not Edna, Ida's owl form, such as the relationship between Luz and Amity, and various things like that. They're interesting, but they're being still built up, and we obviously don't know what the final result's going to be, so it's hard to quite say what to feel about it. We'll have to see exactly where it goes. And there's one other thing I wanted to touch on real quick. I don't know if I mentioned this last time, so when I was talking about like coming back into this series and everything, and I don't remember if I mentioned this last time, but one of the things like I want to bring up here is that I mentioned that just because I dropped the series before doesn't mean I like hated it or anything. I believe I mentioned that last time. Basically, I dropped it because of one thing. Honestly, it was a notable thing, and it did bother me, but it was basically that one thing. And just like outside of that, I still did enjoy the series. I love Luz as a character, especially. Like, I just think she's really fun, entertaining, likable, cutesy. She just is so entertaining. She's so fun. She's exciting. She's hilarious, and she's even relatable. Like you can kind of connect to the entire view on her being seen as weird to the point of people calling it a negative and stuff and trying to fix it and whatnot. And mind you, like at the beginning of the series back in the human world, she did do some things that were a little questionable. Like Didn't she release bats into the school or something like that? And it's like that's a problem. That's obviously a problem. That's going beyond just being a little weird. That's dangerous. Um, but I do like her. And I get her. I understand what they're going with the character there, and even Luz's struggle to kind of prove that she's not just some kind of freak, undeserving of being taken seriously. I get it. And my biggest issue when I watched this before I dropped it the first time and everything was the entire thing with Luz's mom not being shown again after that first episode and all. Because I felt like it was a major plot hole to not touch back on that, especially considering the fact that Luz abandoned this summer camp she was supposed to be going to, and they would have noticed and they would call. They would have called her, and we should have seen that. But, but, I had been told after I originally dropped the series that it does eventually touch on that. I do not know how, so I don't know the context behind any of it, but if it does touch on it, I'm at least glad for that. And we'll see when we get to that episode, whichever episode it ends up being. I actually don't know. All I know is it's touched on, and that's all I want to know. But it's like that was that was the big reason why I did drop it the first time. And although it took someone requesting it as a donation reward to get back into it, I kind of had a desire to give it another chance anyway. Because again, as I said, I did like the show outside of that. I wanted to see more. It's not like Amphibia where it's just like I really wasn't into it. Where like the only thing about Amphibia I was really enjoying was Anne's character herself, but outside of Anne, it's like everything else I just didn't really like that much. No, with this, it's really only one thing I didn't like, and it's a notable thing, and I still stand by that it's important. But there was more that I liked with the series than I didn't, so I did kind of always regret dropping it. And I did always kind of want to get back into it, but I was honestly maybe you could say a little embarrassed about it, and I was afraid to get back into it. But at the same time, I also had other stuff to get that I wanted to get to as well, and I couldn't really find a slot to fit it in perfectly, so it just didn't completely pan out right away because of that. But we got it now. We got it now. We opened the second donation reward slot, so whatever works, right? But yeah, we're gonna get this started. Hope for the best with another episode of this and see where it goes. So let's do so. When the screen fades to black, pause this redirect and go to the description below, follow the link to the reaction, and after you watch it, come back here to the redirect and resume play. Because after it fades to black and then fades back in, everything from that point forward will be my afterthoughts and will contain spoilers to the episode. So, that being said, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you at the reaction. Okay, and we are back, and we'll begin with spoilers in 3, 2, 1, now. So, right when the body swap thing was brought up, I was hoping that this would kind of parody body swap stories, or at least kind of like make fun of them almost. Like a fun idea would have been like, oh, nothing actually happens and it's actually kind of boring, but they're like almost trying to get something to happen, or everything they're doing should be getting something bad to happen, but nothing actually happens from it. Um, that would have been actually really funny, but instead it's just kind of your typical body swap episode. There's not really anything special about it. There's nothing that really sets it apart outside of just having the Owl House's type of comedy in it, which is like, that's really not enough. because it's like again, as I stated before in the reaction, there's the body swap concept has been done to death. It is one of those tropes that is extremely overdone. And that doesn't mean it can't be done well still. It very much can be done well still. But this was just so basic. It's like they didn't even try to make it anything special. They just like, oh, we're gonna do a body swap episode. The only thing that they did was they acknowledged it in the episode that it was a trope by Lou's having that book, Freaky Friday, obviously a play on Freaky Friday, and them like acknowledging kind of the silliness of it at the beginning. But that's it. That's all they did, and that's not enough. The episode was fine. Like the actual content was fine. There was nothing like inherently wrong with it, nothing I hated. But with the concept, it just didn't do pretty much anything, really. It was so by the numbers. It's like everything you would have expected to happen happened on every single side. And it kind of just makes it uninteresting because of that. But let's talk about each part here. So after they swap bodies, we first cover Ida in King's body. Ignore that. Ida's in King's body, and she is having to deal with everybody fawning over her because of, King's body is cute and everything. But she ends up being picked up by these women who run a cat cafe, and the problem is that they coddle the cats so much that it basically turns them into almost vegetables, which is really kind of creepy. I thought there was going to be something more with them as well. Like when you're first introduced to them, when you first get to the cat cafe and all, there's this like overwhelming sense of creepiness to it, and you just think there's going to be something else. Like I mentioned, like what if they eat the cats or something, or sell them to be eaten? I think that would have actually been better than what we got. Instead, they're just creepy, kind of monstrous old ladies who just coddle the animals. There's nothing really inherently that wrong going on. Which I mean, I guess you could kind of say is pretty entertaining, the fact that you expect something to be more than it is, but it's actually just so simple. But I don't know. At the same time, it felt like it didn't work in the context. Meanwhile, King is in Luz's body and starts trying to get all the teenagers to rebel against another teenager with him. I don't remember their names. And at first it goes well, but eventually the girl challenges him to a race using these adorable ratworms. Like I don't know if those were supposed to be as cute as they were, but they were adorable, and I love them. I don't even fully know why. I just found them really fucking cute. um, but seriously, like they go on this race, and she technically wins because King falls off of the bridge, or I guess you could call it a bridge, because it's like either incomplete or in the process of being fixed or something. So King falls off, and just everybody, he accidentally destroys the treasure house that the teenagers were staying in, and because of it the teenagers are upset and just start following the other girl's orders again. He's chased to the cat cafe, where he's captured as well, because the cat cafe owners don't like teenagers for some reason. I think it's just this it's I think they're just playing up with that entire, honestly, lazy um joke about old people not understanding or liking teenagers. I mean, even Gravity Falls did that, and we know that what's his face, the guy from Gravity Falls, voices in obviously, and it helps out with this series. So I can't think of his name right now. The creator of Gravity Falls. I know who it is. I just can't think of his name. I want to say it's Alex something. But either way, um, that was a thing in Gravity Falls too. Granted, the episode that did that in Gravity Falls had a lot more creativity and excitement with it. It was much better done, honestly, than this episode was. Um, but either way, that's just a trope that I think people still think is more real than it is. Like sure, to some degree, some older people may not understand teenagers and just young people in general as much, especially with a lot of the new trends and technologies and whatnot, but it's not quite like what people portray in these cartoons and whatnot. And it's definitely not some kind of like deep rooted hatred like that. It's just like, what? Where are you getting this? At least I've never seen that. Unless you're counting like the yeah, I'm not even gonna get into it. But yeah, you know what I mean. Hopefully, maybe. Anyway, then we have Luz in Ida's body, and Luz does exactly what she was told not to, and puts up that sign. She gets caught, gets involved in an escape attempt, but eventually reconnects with the others. They're swapped back, and Ida swaps everyone else's bodies to help them escape. And that's it. Again, the episode doesn't do anything super exciting or interesting. It's just it's so bland and basic, and it's just like if you've seen any kind of body swap episode or uh, movie or whatnot, you've seen this episode. The only thing that really sets it apart is Owl House's specific brand of humor, and of course the characters and all. There's a tiny bit of development and all too, um, giving us the idea that Ida might have actually wanted to work with her sister at one point, but it's very briefly mentioned and not really expounded into any. Um, so yeah, there's not really much to talk about with that yet, at least. It wasn't bad. It was still enjoyable. There was still a lot of good humor, a lot of fun moments, but overall, it was so basic. It was so basic, so bland, so generic, and it didn't really do as much for me as I would have hoped. But tell me in the comments below what you thought of this episode of The Owl House, and thank you so much for tuning in. For now, I'm Connie, and I'm signing off. See y'all next time.